I remember now, and the French will understand this one, is a phrase in French, il y a des fils qui se perdent. And basically what that means is, I'm gonna be spanking you in a minute if you don't stop doing what you're doing. Now that brings me to the wooden spoons. And Margaret's laughing over there. Well, my mother decided at some point that my butt and her butt were too hard and it would hurt her hand. So she got out the wooden spoons. And after a couple of times, Miriam said, I'm not doing this anymore. So what does she do? She takes the wooden spoons and hides them in various places around the house. And I think you buried one too, out in the garden. So there came a day when she's making something and she's looking for wooden spoons, and there are none, because, and I didn't know where they were, only she did, and she wasn't talking. So there's these things that make her very French. The crepes, we made crepes often. We made spinach, which are also known as pate nun, and me being part French and part English, and American, pate nun, a pate is a fart, and a nun is a nun. So there were nuns farts we were eating, and they were delicious. There were these light little puffs of dough that were deep fried and with some honey and some powdered sugar. We would invite friends from the neighborhood. We would do this. It didn't happen often, but when it did, it was awesome. So there was those parts of being French, and those defined me and her. Then she moved to Cortland, and there she really got into the education. She got her BA and her master's in French and in education, and she wanted to start teaching then, teaching for real. She started out at Port Byron Central School, and she was there for a little while, but then she made a leap to teaching French at Cortland State, and she did that for quite a few years, living there. The important thing about her teaching and moving to Cortland was that she was taking a big chance, a big leap. She had decided to move. She was on her own, she was 50 years old, and she's moving to a new city, starting a new career, and it really, her independence and her resilience really showed through. And I was very proud of that. You know, at that time, I was living in Ithaca when she moved to Cortland, and at first I thought she was nuts, but then I realized that this is what she had to do because she is independent. She wasn't going to fit into a mold. She had to do what she needed to do, and she did, and she thrived there. Then finally, she decided to move here to Ithaca, and teaching at Ithaca College, same thing, teaching French. Here she met a whole bunch of people that became her friends for life. And she was surrounded by like-minded people. She was surrounded by a lot of love from these people. And you could really tell that she was home. You know, she was home here in Ithaca. Gardening, as Mary pointed out, gardening. She was big, huge into gardening. She had a plot in the community garden in addition to her plot in her apartment. And so one thing I want to point out is that when she was gardening, it wasn't like these little plots. She had like 500, 600, 700 square feet of garden. And remember, our backyard growing up in Auburn, fully 1/3 of that space was garden. And she was out there every day. And she just grew stuff that was unbelievable. And here, you know, she thrived even more with this. You know, as Miriam said, it was her therapy. And it was her therapy. Every place that she lived, there was some sort of dirt with something in it growing. And that was one of her trademarks. You know, Mom had a tremendous, tremendous love for the earth. Mom was green before green was a thing, right? And everything that she could do to maintain her presence with her relationship, I should say, with the earth, she did. Composting, recycling, repurposing, reusing. This is all very normal stuff to her. We thought she was crazy sometimes, but she wasn't crazy. She was just about 30 years ahead of her time. That's all. Because today, she's pretty mainstream. whereas 30 years ago, she was way out there. And then Mom, of course, being a nonconformist, she decides to buy a house when she's 80 plus years old. Now, most of us are thinking about downsizing. Well, she decided to upsize. And she bought a house, and I remember moving her in there, and it was very weird for me. She was very excited, but I just kept saying, Mom, do you really need this much space? And she says, well, you never know. I might need it. Besides, where am I going to put my plants? Okay. So she bought a house. I'm still amazed to this day that she actually bought a house when she's 80-something years old. I hope that I have that same amount of balls, if you will, to do something like that when I'm 80 plus years old. As I said, she was a nonconformist. She did things on her own terms, and best of all, she was able to leave this world on her own terms, in her own house, in her own bed. That was something that was very, very important to her, and she got her wish. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Robert. I'd like to invite forward Micheline's daughter-in-law, Kathleen.
Micheline and I always had a very warm relationship. We certainly did not have the stereotypic mother-in-law, daughter-in-law relationship. Obviously, if we had, I probably wouldn't be standing here speaking with you. She was always very concerned for my health, my happiness, my well-being. So much, in fact, that Robert and I used to joke that his parents, maybe his dad a little bit more than Micheline, but that his parents liked me more than they liked him. But on a more serious note, the one thing that I really admired about Micheline was that she lived most of her life outside of her native country. And Robert and Miriam and I didn't talk at all about what we're going to say today, and I've been surprised that you'll hear a kind of a common theme in our comments. And the reason I admired Micheline for that is that one of my life goals was always to live and work outside the United States. And fortunately, I was able to accomplish that. My family and I lived in Mongolia, but we only lived there for 7 months. Micheline lived and worked outside her native country for over 60 years. Obviously, she was a little bit better at it than I am. But since I couldn't do it as much as she did it, she brought a lot of that international spirit and experience to me and my family. Because of Micheline, we have relatives in France, in Switzerland, in Monaco, in Guadeloupe, and we had Tonton André in Vietnam. And I think that obviously a little bit of Micheline certainly rubbed off at least on our son, Rob. He can't be here today because he is living and working in Madagascar. And while he's there, of course, using his French because that's one of the official languages of Madagascar. So I hope, Rob, you're seeing us on TV. The other thing I wanted to say is that now that Micheline is gone, my mother, Benita, is the only surviving grandparent of my children. And when I told my mother about Micheline's passing, she was very upset and very shaken, and I was a little bit surprised because Micheline and my mother didn't really have the opportunity to spend that much time together. My mother lived most of her adult life in Seattle until a couple of years ago she moved back to her native state of Montana. But obviously there's a great distance between them, so they were not together that much. But my mother sent us a sympathy card, and in the card, she explained her closeness to Micheline. She said she always felt a kinship with Micheline because they were so close together in age. Coincidentally, Micheline and my mother and Bob Contiguglia were born all in 1931, but they were born within 3 weeks of each other. So they were born very close in time, but very far apart in distance. Micheline, of course, born in France, Bob in New York, and my mother in Montana. So that explains part of, as I say, why she always felt close to Micheline and why she mourned her passing. The other thing that my mother wrote in her card was that one life touches so many lives. And that I also realize is true, because Micheline certainly touched my life, and I am very grateful that she did.
In honor or in memory of Micheline, we are going to have a poem in French and then translated into English. It'll be delivered by Liddy Hanlon, a dear friend, and her granddaughter, not her granddaughter, Micheline's granddaughter, Madeline. So I invite them forward at this time.
The poem I'm going to read was written by Eddie Bouraoui, a long and dear friend of Micheline. His work, admired around the world, led him to receive the highest literary honor in Canada, where he has lived for 55 years. Micheline was particularly fond of this poem as it talks about roots, land, and flowers. Now, I don't know it by heart, so I read it. The title is Racines. Vois comment s'épanouit en moi, planté dans le pluriel écartelé des terres. Vois mon être cultiver le choc des racines, remonter jusqu'à la fierté des regards provocateurs. Vois mon paraître descendre les branches du paradoxe, à faire crier d'envie l'unique noyé dans l'aigreur. Et l'équilibre porte ses fruits dans le multiple des fleurs, que mon moi, serein, cueille dans la joie, en plein hiver.
Okay. The title of the poem is Root. See how my self blossoms, planted in the torn plural of the lands. See my being cultivate the shock of the roots, trace back to the pride of provocative looks. See my appearance descend the branches of paradox. To cause to cry with envy, the unique one drowned in the bitterness, as equilibrium bears its fruits in the multiplicity of flowers that my serene self gathers joyfully in the middle of winter.
I'm going to play some César Franck. I remember Micheline loving French organ music. When I arrived here to play at this church, she was already a longtime member and sang in the choir. And she knew that I had spent time in Senegal in a Francophone country, so she always spoke French to me, which made me happy. And yes, I'll miss her.
Miriam and Robert have prepared a wonderful gathering outside this sanctuary with pictures and wonderful cookies with the French flag. But we have some time, and I wonder if there are those of you among here today who might want to share a story of your memories of Micheline and just kind of enlarge our collective memory and cherishing of her. I'd invite you to come forward.
Hi, I'm Raisa Gebhardt Farmer. My mother is Françoise. I wear a mask everywhere so that I don't have to wear one with her. I wrote this after seeing Micheline in the last week of her life. I don't know if I'll get through it. Micheline was a bright light in my life. When I first met her, I don't even know when it was, maybe 35, 40 years ago, I thought to myself, well, here is an unconventional woman. One of my first memories of her, and it may be the first time I met her, we took a road trip to Toronto, she and my mom and I. And I was in the back and they were in the front just chattering away en français. I could always tell when they were talking about me. They would say Elle, and I would be like, oh yeah, that's me. Very quickly I learned that Micheline was also kind, caring, outgoing, and intelligent. And she was, for as long as I knew her, a woman who knew her own mind. I admired that about her. Micheline is gone, but not gone. She will always be with me, always be with us in frequent moments of remembering her smile, her voice, her charm. It's just so easy to conjure her in any moment. Holidays, birthdays, chance meetings at the grocery store or the farmer's market, her warm smile. Early morning walks on the beach in Gloucester come to mind often. She came to visit with my mother a couple of summers, and she loved to go out at 7 o'clock in the morning. We would go down to the beach before anyone got there, and we'd walk up and down the beach in the sunshine, and she just loved it. She was such a great friend to my mom. They shared a common history, both children, when the Nazis invaded and occupied France. They were both sent from their homes. They lived on rations. And I think that and the fact that they were both just incredibly independent women formed a basis of a really great friendship. They laughed all the time. They sparred all the time. Micheline somehow smoothed my mom's rough edges. She was a great friend, companion, travel partner, brunch partner, and confidant. I love Micheline. I will miss her and will always be grateful to have had her in my life. She is still a bright light.
Hi, my name is Amy Bukowski, and I spent many wonderful hours talking with Micheline at her house, and she came over to our house for dinner sometimes, and I just really always loved her independent spirit, and she taught me so much, and I'm really going to miss her. And I just wanted to tell you what a warm and wonderful person she was.
My name is Michael Saley. I'm a stranger to most of you, but Micheline would come to the farm that I grew up on in eastern Wayne County and western Cayuga County. Our farm straddled both counties with Robert and the two children. And she was just a breath of fresh air to our home every time she came. When my Aunt Rose would say that Micheline and Robert were coming, I would get excited, as would my sisters, because she was so different and so unique. I can still remember her calling Robert Robert and Miriam. And she would speak to them in French when they needed to correct their behavior a little bit. But she was very unique, and sad to say, I didn't keep in touch with her after the children were, after their visits to the farm ended. I went off to college and the Peace Corps and got married and did a bunch of things, and lost touch with her. But whenever there was an article in the paper about her, or we would hear that she was teaching at Cortland and then again at Ithaca, I would think to myself, it'd be nice to see her again. But I didn't have contact information. I was kind of lazy, I guess. But she made an impact on my life, and there was just an intrigue about her. I think probably from her French background that I think gave me an interest in living in a foreign culture. And my wife and I did that in the Peace Corps. And then after we raised our 3 children, we went to Nicaragua and worked there in community development for 13 years. So I'm not sure how much influence Micheline had on us, or on me in particular, for the careers that we chose, but I'm sure that she planted a seed in my heart to see how other people lived and to enjoy other cultures, and I too will miss her. But somebody once said that those we love never go away. They live with us in our hearts, and they're part of who we are. And that's comforting to me, and I hope it's comforting to you, and I believe that with all my heart. Thank you.
My name is David Contiguglia. I'm one of Micheline's nephews. Micheline's spirit, Micheline's presence, it's undeniable. It's undeniable also for each one of us as we touch people, as we reach out, as we give somebody 3 more minutes of our time to listen, to care. Aunt Micheline married into an Italian family in the 1950s, an American-Italian family with 7 siblings. And her father-in-law was a lawyer in the community. Her husband was a lawyer who became a judge. Her husband's twin brother, my father, was also a lawyer. And her identity and her spirit was not subsumed into that. And there are many ways that were shared today where she remained true and intact, but always loving and always caring for everyone. I'm a lawyer in Auburn, New York. Auburn, New York is where the Contiguglia family that Micheline became a part of lived and continues to live. And the wake-up call, if I want to call it that for me, is that there was a time in my practice where I became maybe habitually expecting that people would know something about my father, my grandfather, my uncle, even my cousins came up quite a bit. But what is enduring to me is that more often than not, I will have people reminisce about my Aunt Micheline. And it will come from all these different varied areas of our community. And it's usually when I least expect it. So, I'm very grateful that during the last days of her life, her children invited me to participate. And I think Micheline loved us a lot more than we ever imagined. And I will say that we, Micheline and I, experienced a moment of peace that during those final days where it was just right. We were alone, and she was comfortable, and the light was coming in, the sunlight was coming in the bedroom windows, and the breeze was gentle, and a few birds could be heard, and it was just such peace. So a way was being prepared for her to receive a gentleness that was her. And that was my experience with my aunt. And thank you for letting me share that with you today.
Hello. There are a lot of friends whom I haven't seen for years. Together with my son, we moved back to Poland 8 years ago, and we just flew here yesterday to be here at this moment with you and with Micheline. I wasn't thinking that I will be speaking here, so it's not prepared, but something will come out of my heart. We met with Micheline at the International Folk Dancing, and we became very close friends. We discovered that we had the same date of birth. We just moved 40 years apart. So I was laughing that we're twins. We're twins, just the year is not matching. Micheline it's amazing that on one's path we can find such close connections. Micheline was my best friend. Sometimes I felt like she was my sister, sometimes she was my mother. She became a grandmother to my son. She was the first person to hear that I was pregnant, and I remember her reaction. She would clap and jump like a child and laugh. So even flying here now, we were telling people that we have to leave because we had a death in the family, and my son was saying that his grandma passed away, so we have to come. I remember her biscotti. She would cook them, bake them twice, of course, and put them in a pot, in a jar. And she would always say, when I die, I want my ashes in the cookie jar. So every now and then I remember her funny sayings, and I laugh through the tears. We spent a lot of time together. I was living with her in one house for some time. She was supporting me in good moments of life, and then harder ones too. I have some recordings. There were some funny moments, and I would grab a camera and I say, oh, I want this to last. I had some little interview with her, which I recorded. I was hoping to put it all together for today, but I didn't finish it. And then I thought that maybe some of you have maybe have some pictures or memories. So maybe you can give it to Miriam, and then I would use it and put it all together. Otherwise, it would be only my memories and my Micheline, but this way I will include all of us together. Okay, so she's really part of us. Her life moved us, changed us. So I'm very thankful for having this opportunity. Thank you.
How grateful are we that this hour has enabled us to capture at least some glimpses of who Micheline was to her family, her friends, no doubt helping all of us today to reflect on our own memories. Friends, may what has been captured that is of life and value of a life lived well touch each of our lives, as we honor the dead most intimately by living lives of even greater intention going forward. When confronted with death, there can surface a much-needed urgency to all of us to live lives that are more gentle. We have lost a gentle soul, more forgiving, more loving than we think we're sometimes capable of. What a way to honor our dear friend than to do just that. Blessed be, and amen.